A mother leaned down to kiss her daughter one final time before the funeral. But in that heartbreaking moment, her eyes caught something strange. What she saw was so terrifying that her sorrow turned into panic. With trembling hands, she screamed for help and immediately called the police. Before starting the story, write down where you watched it below and enjoy the story. If you like this inspiring video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The day of the funeral began in silence. Not the ordinary kind of silence that fills a house at dawn when everyone is asleep. This silence was heavy, suffocating, like a blanket pressing down on every breath. Laura stood at the kitchen counter, her hands gripping a porcelain cup of coffee that had already gone cold. She hadn't even tasted it. The smell of roasted beans floated faintly in the air, mixing with the waxy scent of the white lilies that neighbors had brought over the night before. Her eyes were red, swollen from too many sleepless hours. She glanced at the wall clock. 7:12 a.m. time was moving, yet she felt trapped in a place where it no longer mattered. Today was the day she had to bury Emily, her only daughter. The very thought tightened something inside her chest until she could hardly breathe. Just yesterday, it felt, Emily was laughing in the living room, her soft blonde hair bouncing as she spun to show her new dress. 17 years old, full of dreams, filling the house with songs, chatter, the occasional slam of her bedroom door when she was upset. And now the house was just walls and shadows. Laura turned the cup slowly in her hands, her fingertips trembling. The coffee rippled inside, small rings widening with every tiny movement. She stared at them, hypnotized, until a noise startled her. The front door creaked open. It was David, her husband, stepping inside after speaking with the funeral director outside. He looked pale, exhausted, as though grief had stripped the color from his face. His suit was too formal, too stiff, almost foreign on him. He didn't speak. He just closed the door and leaned against it for a second, pressing his hands to his eyes. "They'll be here at 9, he finally muttered, his voice hoarse. Laura nodded faintly but said nothing. 9 o'clock, the hearse, the casket, the final goodbye. The words didn't feel real. None of this did. She moved slowly across the kitchen, her slippers whispering against the tile, and paused at the hallway that led to Emily's room. That door had remained closed since the hospital. Laura hadn't been able to walk in there, not even once, since her daughter was declared gone. Just looking at it from afar twisted something deep in her stomach, but today she would have to face it. Her hands shook as she reached for the handle, but she stopped herself. She turned away, walked instead to the dining room where a few relatives were already gathered. The air smelled of flowers and grief. On the table, several dishes were untouched: casseroles, loaves of bread, pies. Neighbors had brought them as if food could possibly soften the hollow ache of losing a child. Aunt Margaret sat in the corner clutching a rosary. Her lips moved silently with every bead she touched. Laura's sister, Helen, was pouring herself a glass of water, her eyes darting nervously around the room, as though searching for something to anchor herself to. Everyone avoided looking at the closed casket that stood in the living room. It was temporary. At the chapel, they would open it again so family could say their final farewells. But here, even sealed, it radiated a presence too strong to ignore. Laura could feel it in the air, in the way people whispered softer than usual, in the way every clock tick sounded louder. Her daughter was in there. And yet, Laura's chest tightened again. Something gnawed at her. Something she couldn't explain. The night before, she had gone to touch Emily's hand one last time at the funeral home. She remembered how strangely soft it felt. Not stiff, not cold the way she expected. The makeup artist had whispered something about how sometimes the embalming makes them look too natural. But Laura knew, a mother always knew. She had pulled her hand away quickly, pretending it was nothing, but the feeling haunted her. Now, staring at the casket from across the room, Laura felt that same unease. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Helen noticed. "Laura, you should sit down. You look pale." "I'm fine," Laura whispered. Her voice cracked. She wasn't fine at all. David walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was firm, almost too firm, as though urging her to stay grounded, but his eyes avoided hers. He hadn't cried since the hospital, not once. His stoicism made her want to scream. Didn't he feel it? Didn't he sense the wrongness in the air? She pressed her lips together, holding back words she couldn't yet name. At 8 o'clock, the first hour. Eyes of sunlight cut through the curtains. The house grew brighter, though no one seemed to notice. The funeral home staff arrived soon after, speaking softly, their footsteps careful as though they feared disturbing the dead. They prepared to move the casket, murmuring instructions to one another. Laura's hands clenched together. Her breathing quickened. She knew she would see her daughter again at the chapel. One last time. One last kiss on the forehead before they lowered the lid forever. But deep inside her, something screamed. Something wasn't right. The ride to the chapel was silent. Laura sat in the black car, her sister beside her, her husband across. Outside, the world looked unchanged, children on bicycles, a woman walking her dog, neighbors sweeping porches. Life moved forward cruelly, carelessly, as if nothing monumental had happened. Laura pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She wanted to scream at the world to stop. Just stop. Beside her, Helen squeezed her hand. She looks like she's sleeping, she whispered, her voice trembling. Laura nodded faintly. She couldn't speak. The chapel loomed ahead, white stone walls rising against the morning sky. Its bell tower stretched high, casting a long shadow across the ground. Inside, the smell of incense and flowers mingled, heavy and almost suffocating. Candles flickered softly, painting the walls in golden hues. The casket was placed at the front, lid open now. Laura's breath caught in her throat. She rose on shaking legs, her heels clicking against the floor, echoing louder than she wanted. Step by step, she approached. Every footfall felt like dragging 1,000 pounds of sorrow. And then she saw Emily. Her daughter lay dressed in a soft blue dress, her hair brushed neatly, her hands folded across her chest. She looked peaceful, but too peaceful, like a porcelain doll. Her lips had been tinted faintly pink by the mortician, but there was something about them that made Laura's heart stutter. Too soft, too alive. Laura's hand rose to her mouth. Her whole body trembled. Her sister whispered behind her, "Say goodbye, Laura. Kiss her one last time." Laura leaned in. Her face hovered just inches above her daughter's. And that was when she saw it. A twitch. A movement so subtle she almost thought it was her imagination. Her daughter's lips quivered. Her eyes shot wide, a scream ripping from her throat before she could stop herself. "My God, SHES moving." The chapel erupted. The scream tore through the chapel like glass shattering. Heads jerked up. Conversations stopped mid-whisper. Someone dropped a prayer book and the sound echoed against the stone floor. Laura stumbled backward, one hand pressed to her chest, the other pointing at the coffin. She moved. I saw it. My daughter moved." Her words cracked the silence into chaos. Margaret, the aunt clutching her rosary, gasped loudly. The beads slipped from her fingers and scattered onto the ground. Helen grabbed Laura's arm to steady her, whispering frantically, "Laura, you're in shock. It's grief. Please." But Laura's eyes stayed locked on Emily's lips. She wasn't imagining it. She knew she was. "I saw it," she whispered hoarsely. Her mouth, it trembled. "She's not gone. She can't be." The funeral home staff exchanged uneasy glances. One of the men, a tall figure in a black suit, approached the coffin cautiously. He leaned over Emily's still form, squinting in the dim candlelight. "Mrs. Laura," he said softly, "sometimes the air inside the body causes slight movements. No." Laura's voice cut him like a knife. She shoved his arm away, her voice shaking, raw. "Don't you dare explain this away. I'm her mother. I know what I saw." Her cries echoed off the chapel walls. People stirred, some murmuring prayers under their breath, others looking around nervously as though evil itself had entered the room. David finally stepped forward, his face pale but his jaw set. He placed both hands on Laura's shoulders. "Laura," he said firmly, almost coldly. "She's gone. You're seeing things you want to see." She stared at him in disbelief. "How can you?" Her voice cracked. "How can you be so sure? Didn't you see? Didn't you see it?" David avoided her gaze, glancing instead at the crowd gathering closer around the coffin. And then it happened again. A sound, faint, barely audible, a whisper of breath. Laura froze, her body trembling as she leaned closer. Her daughter's chest had risen only slightly but unmistakably. This time, others saw it too. A shriek came from the back of the room. Someone fainted onto the pew. Gasps and muffled screams rippled through the chapel like a wave. "She's breathing." Laura cried, her voice soaring in desperation. "Oh God, she's breathing?" Panic erupted. Some guests pressed toward the coffin, desperate to see. Others fled backward, crossing themselves, muttering about miracles or curses. The priest at tea. He dropped his book, his lips moving wordlessly in shock. Helen grabbed her sister's trembling hands. "Laura, call someone. Call the police. Call the hospital." Laura's heart pounded in her ears. She fumbled for her phone with trembling fingers, nearly dropping it as she dialed emergency services. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the receiver. My daughter was declared dead, but she's moving, she's breathing. Please send help to St. Mary's Chapel. Now." The operator's calm voice contrasted with Laura's hysteria. "Ma'am, stay calm. Paramedics are on their way. Keep her comfortable. Do not close the casket. Don't you dare close it," Laura screamed, turning on the funeral staff who still lingered by the coffin. "Keep your hands off her." David pressed his palms to his forehead, pacing like a man trapped. "This is impossible," he muttered, shaking his head. "She was pronounced dead. We signed the papers." "They did everything at the hospital." Laura spun toward him, tears streaking her face. "And yet she's breathing, David, breathing, look at her." For the first time, his eyes flicked toward the coffin and his face went ashen. Emily's lips parted slightly. A faint puff of air escaped. Her fingers twitched beneath the rosary clasped between them. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't gas. It was life. The room dissolved into chaos. The priest shouted over the cries, "Everyone stay back. Give space." "God have mercy, give her space." Two cousins pushed benches aside to make room around the casket. A woman near the door screamed that it was witchcraft. Others sobbed, clutching each other, unable to comprehend. Laura pressed forward, her body trembling violently. She reached into the coffin, grabbing her daughter's hand. Warm, not stiff, not cold, warm, she let out a broken sob. "She's alive. My Emily is alive." Helen shouted toward the door. "Where are the medics?" "They're on the way." Someone cried back. Seconds stretched into eternity. Laura leaned closer, her forehead almost touching Emily's. "Baby, it's Mama. Can you hear me? I'm right here. Hold on, please hold on." Emily's eyelids fluttered barely, but enough. A scream tore from Laura's throat, half horror, half joy. She moved her eyes. "She hears me." And then something strange happened. David, standing rigid near the altar, turned sharply away. His hand clenched into a fist at his side. Laura noticed it through her tears. A flash of something cold in his face. Not relief, not joy, something else. She blinked, trying to understand. But before she could question, the heavy wooden doors of the chapel burst open. Paramedics rushed in, their red bags swinging at their sides, their uniforms cutting sharply against the candlelit gloom. "Step aside," one barked. "Give us space." The crowd scattered in a frenzy, whispering prayers, clutching children, backing into corners. Laura refused to let go of Emily's hand. One medic, a woman with short dark hair and a name tag that read Dr. Valeria Cruz, leaned over quickly, placing 2 fingers at Emily's throat. Her eyes widened almost immediately. "She has a pulse." The room erupted again. "She's alive. Impossible. God be praised." Dr. Cruz's voice was calm but urgent. "Weak, irregular, but it's there. We need to move her now." Another medic prepared an oxygen mask, sliding it over Emily's pale face. Her chest rose and fell faintly, supported by the flow of air. Laura wept openly, her whole body shaking with relief. "Thank you, God. Thank you. I knew it. I knew she wasn't gone." Helen hugged her tightly, whispering, "She's here, Laura. She's still here." But amid the cries of joy, Laura caught sight of David again. He hadn't moved closer. He hadn't cried out in relief. He just stood there, pale, rigid, his eyes shadowed with something unreadable. And for the first time, a new kind of fear crept into Laura's chest. The ambulance screamed through the streets, its sirens tearing apart the morning calm. Inside, chaos and hope battled for control. Laura sat wedged on the narrow bench, gripping Emily's limp hand so tightly her knuckles blanched. The oxygen mask fogged faintly with each shallow breath her daughter drew. Machines beeped erratically, unstable lines dancing across the small monitor attached to her finger. "Stay with us," Dr. Valeria Cruz muttered, leaning over Emily's body, her latex-gloved hands steady despite the tremor of the vehicle. "Stay with us, sweetheart, don't give up." Laura's tears fell onto Emily's blue dress. "She won't. She's strong. She's always been strong." Every bump of the road jostled the stretcher. Every second felt like an eternity dangling over an abyss. David sat silent in the far corner of the ambulance, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. His eyes never left Emily, but there was no relief in them. No joy. Only a hollow, stormy darkness Laura couldn't read. The ambulance screeched into the emergency bay of St. Matthew's Hospital. Nurses and orderly swarmed the stretcher as it was wheeled out. The rush of voices, the clatter of metal doors, the blinding white of the hospital corridors. Laura felt swept into a current too strong to resist. 17-year-old female declared deceased yesterday, Dr. Cruz barked to the receiving team. Found signs of life at chapel. Weak pulse, shallow, spontaneous breaths. Oxygen administered en route. Pulse irregular. Prepare for ICU. The doors banged open. The stretcher rolled into the trauma bay. Bright lights blazed overhead. Machines whirred, syringes snapped open, gloves stretched onto trembling hands. Laura tried to follow, but a nurse gently intercepted her. "Ma'am, please, you'll need to wait outside. They'll update you." "No, she's my daughter. Please let me stay." "Just for a moment, ma'am. We need space to work." Her knees gave way. Helen caught her by the arms, pulling her into a chair outside the glass doors. Laura pressed her palms against the transparent surface, watching in horror as doctors swarmed her daughter's fragile body. The room was alive with shouts. "BP dropping. Get a line in fast. Prepare epinephrine." Laura's breath caught with each command. Her whole body shook with every beep, every frantic voice. A doctor stepped into view, tall, broad-shouldered, his name badge flashing, Dr. Samuel Hayes, cardiology. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was a shadow of disbelief beneath his professional calm. "How long was she declared deceased?" he asked crisply. Dr. Cruz replied quickly, "Hospital report yesterday, time of death 11:34 a.m. cause, cardiac arrest." Hayes froze, his eyes narrowing. "And embalming, has it been performed?" "No, only preparation. Family opted for viewing." He pressed his lips together, muttering, "Then someone rushed this. Someone got it very, very wrong." Laura's head jerked up. She pounded on the glass, her voice breaking. "What do you mean wrong? She wasn't dead. She was alive this whole time." The doctors ignored her, continuing their frantic work, but Laura's scream lingered in the sterile air. Inside, Hayes leaned close to Emily's chest with a stethoscope. He frowned deeply. "There's electrical activity. It's faint, but it's there. She's been in some form of suspended state. This isn't typical." Suspended. The word echoed in Laura's mind like thunder. Her heart twisted violently, suspended between life and death for hours, while she had cried over her daughter's body, believing her gone. The thought nearly made her vomit. The minutes stretched painfully. Then finally, "She's stabilizing," one of the nurses said, relief flooding her voice. "Pulse irregular but steady. Oxygen saturation improving." Laura let out a sob so strong she collapsed into Helen's arms. "She's here," Helen whispered, tears streaming. "Laura, she's here." But Laura barely heard her. Her eyes locked again on David, who stood behind them in the hallway. He hadn't moved. His expression hadn't changed, and when he finally spoke, his words made Laura's blood run cold. Maybe she wasn't meant to wake up. Laura's head whipped toward him, disbelief crashing over her. "What did you just say?" He blinked slowly, as though realizing too late what had escaped his lips. "I mean, maybe this isn't good for her. She was gone. Maybe it's cruel she's back." "Cruel?" Laura stared at him, her stomach lurching. How could any father say that? Unless there was something he didn't want uncovered. Dr. Hayes stepped out of the trauma bay, pulling his gloves off with a snap. His face was grave but steady. "She's alive," he said, "but she's in a deep coma. We've stabilized her heart for now. The next 24 hours are critical." Laura surged forward, grabbing his arm. "Will she wake up? Tell me she'll wake up." Hayes hesitated. "It's impossible to know yet, but..." He glanced down the corridor, lowering his voice. "Something is strange here, Mrs. Laura, very strange. This doesn't happen by accident." "What do you mean?" He studied her face, then asked quietly, "Do you trust everyone around you?" Laura blinked, stunned. "What are you saying?" But before he could answer, an alarm blared inside the ICU. Nurses shouted again. Hayes spun on his heel and rushed back in. Laura's stomach dropped. Her daughter's fight was far from over. Hours passed in blurred fragments, doctors adjusting machines, nurses rushing in and out, the endless hiss of oxygen, the monotonous beep of monitors. Laura refused to leave the hallway. Helen stayed by her side, whispering prayers, clutching her rosary until her fingers were raw. David left twice, to smoke outside, he said. Each time, Laura watched him walk away with suspicion clawing at her chest. Late that night, Hayes finally emerged again. His face was pale with exhaustion. "She's stable," he said softly. "For now." Laura let out a shuddering breath, tears spilling. She sagged against Helen's shoulder, but Hayes didn't leave. He leaned closer, high. Eyes sharp. "I need you to answer something honestly, Mrs. Laura." She straightened, heart pounding. "Anything. Before yesterday, did Emily ever seem afraid of anyone? Did she mention trouble at home, at school, anything unusual?" Laura's blood ran cold. Images flashed in her mind, Emily avoiding eye contact at dinner, locking her bedroom door more often, the time she came home pale and refused to explain why. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Hayes studied her face and gave a slow nod. "I thought so," he said quietly, "because what I see in there doesn't look like a simple heart attack. There are marks, small ones, fingertip bruises around her wrists and neck." Laura's heart stopped. Bruises. Her daughter hadn't just collapsed. Someone had hurt her. Her vision blurred with tears. Her body trembled uncontrollably. She pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle the scream building inside her. Helen grabbed her arm. "Laura, what did he say?" But Laura couldn't speak. Her mind was already screaming one name: David, her husband, Emily's stepfather, and now possibly the reason her daughter had nearly been buried alive. The hallway was too quiet. After Dr. Hayes' words, silence pressed down on Laura until she felt she might suffocate. Bruises, fingertip-shaped bruises on Emily's wrists and neck. That wasn't illness. That wasn't fate. That was violence. Laura's stomach churned violently. She clutched the edge of a plastic chair to steady herself. "Laura," Helen whispered, her eyes wide with worry, "what did the doctor tell you? You look like you've seen a ghost." Laura swallowed hard, shaking her head. "Not here, not now." She couldn't. Not with David only a few feet away, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, pretending to scroll through his phone. His expression was unreadable in the harsh fluorescent light. Her heart thudded painfully. Was it him? She couldn't let herself believe it, but every instinct screamed that she had to. Hours dragged by, the night growing heavier, until the hospital's glass doors reflected the first dull light of dawn. Laura hadn't closed her eyes once. Every time she tried, she saw Emily's face in that coffin, lips twitching back to life, fighting to breathe while the world thought she was gone. She couldn't risk resting, not when danger might be closer than anyone realized. At 6 a.m, David walked toward her. His steps were slow, almost too deliberate. "You should go home," he muttered. "Shower, eat something, you look awful." Laura's jaw tightened. "I'm not leaving her." His eyes flicked briefly to the ICU door where Emily lay surrounded by machines, then back to Laura. "She's unconscious. She won't know if you're here or not." The words cut deep, cold, and dismissive. Laura felt something inside her snap. She stood abruptly, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "What happened to her, David?" His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Emily didn't just collapse. There are marks, bruises. Her voice trembled, but she pushed through. "Someone hurt her. Who was it?" For a flicker of a second, just a flicker, his face changed. His eyes widened, then narrowed quickly as if sealing something away. "Don't start, Laura," he hissed under his breath. "You're exhausted. You're not thinking straight." "I'm her mother," she snapped, her voice breaking. "I know when something is wrong. I know it, David." Her words echoed down the sterile corridor. Nurses turned to glance, whispering among themselves. David leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "You're unraveling. People will think you've lost it. Is that what you want, to make a scene in front of everyone?" Laura's skin crawled. His calmness wasn't comfort, it was chilling. She pulled away, trembling. "If you know something, you'd better tell me now, because I swear I will find out." Helen returned with 2 cups of coffee from the cafeteria, just in time to hear Laura's last words. She froze, her eyes darting between the two of them. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. David straightened immediately, plastering a weary expression across his face. "Nothing, just stress." Laura wanted to scream, but she bit her tongue. Not here, not with him watching. She accepted the coffee with shaking hands, whispering a soft thank you, but her mind was racing. "I need proof. I need help." Later that morning, Dr. Hayes emerged from the ICU. His face was drawn with fatigue, but his eyes sharpened when they met Laura's. "Can I speak with you privately?" he asked. Laura nodded quickly, shooting Helen a look to keep David occupied. She followed Hayes into a small consultation room, her heart thudding. The doctor closed the door softly, then folded his arms. "I don't normally say this to families, but I think you need to hear it." "Please," Laura whispered. Emily's condition is highly unusual. Her brain activity is suppressed but not gone. Her pulse was faint but not absent. Whoever declared her dead was Eve. Are careless or intentionally misleading? Laura's breath caught. Intentionally? Hayes hesitated, then nodded slowly. Those bruises I mentioned, they weren't minor. They suggest someone gripped her hard, possibly strangled her. Combine that with the misdiagnosis, and well, he exhaled sharply. It doesn't add up. Laura's knees nearly gave way. She gripped the back of a chair for support. Oh my God, have you contacted the police? Hayes asked gently. Laura shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I was too afraid. My husband. She cut herself off, realizing how much she was revealing. But Hayes's eyes softened with understanding. He nodded once. Then let me make it official. I'll file a report myself. I've seen too many cases swept under the rug. I won't let that happen here. Laura covered her mouth, choking back a sob. For the first time in days, she felt the faintest flicker of relief. Someone was on her side. When she returned to the waiting area, David stood up sharply. What did he say? He demanded. Laura forced her voice to stay calm. That she's stable, that's all. David narrowed his eyes. He studied her face for a long moment, as if trying to read what she wasn't saying. Finally, he nodded once and sat back down. But Laura could feel it, the distance between them widening into something dangerous. By mid-afternoon, 2 plainclothes officers arrived at the hospital. They introduced themselves quietly, Detective Harris and Detective Cole. Mrs. Laura. Harris asked, his tone calm but firm, "We'd like to ask you a few questions about your daughter." David stiffened. Is that really necessary right now? Harris's gaze flicked to him briefly before returning to Laura. It is, sir. We'll try to be discreet. Laura's hands trembled as she nodded. Of course, anything to help. The detectives led her down the hall into another consultation room. Cole opened a notebook, flipping to a clean page. Start from the beginning. Everything you remember about the day Emily was declared dead. Laura swallowed hard. She told them about the hospital, the doctor who shook his head, the death certificate signed too quickly. She described touching Emily's hand at the funeral home, how warm it felt. And then the chapel, the twitch, the breath, the scream. Her voice cracked several times, tears slipping down her cheeks. But the detectives listened intently, scribbling notes, their eyes sharp. When she finished, Harris leaned back in his chair. And your husband, he said carefully. Where was he during all this? Laura froze, the words tangled in her throat. He was there, at the hospital, at the chapel, always near, but she hesitated, her chest tightening. There's something off. He hasn't cried once. And when Emily breathed again, he didn't look relieved. He looked angry. Cole's pen stopped moving. He and Harris exchanged a glance. Mrs. Laura, Harris said gently, has Emily ever confided in you about problems at home? Did she seem afraid of anyone? Laura's heart pounded. The memory of Emily's pale face at dinner, the quick way she'd retreat to her room, the whisper she once said, "Mom, sometimes I don't feel safe," flashed through her mind. Tears spilled faster. She nodded silently. The detectives closed their notebooks slowly. Thank you, Harris said. That's enough for now. We'll be in touch. When Laura stepped back into the waiting room, David's eyes were locked on her. He didn't ask what the detectives had said. He didn't need to, because his gaze told her everything. Somewhere behind those dark, guarded eyes, he knew the walls were closing in. The beeping of the monitors was the only sound that filled the ICU. Slow, uneven, unpredictable. Laura sat at her daughter's bedside, her fingers entwined with Emily's limp hand. The oxygen mask covered most of her pale face, but Laura leaned close anyway, whispering words into her ear, desperate for her to hear them. I'm here, sweetheart. I'll never leave you again, just fight a little longer, please. The machines hissed, pumping life into lungs that should never have been silenced. Laura's tears soaked the sheets, but she refused to move. Behind her, the curtain shifted. David stepped into the room. His footsteps were soft, but Laura felt them like thunder. You need rest, he muttered. You're no good to her like this. Laura stiffened. She didn't answer. She'll wake up eventually, or she won't, he continued. But you're killing yourself sitting here every second. Laura turned slowly. Her eyes were red, but her voice was firm. Don't you dare talk about her like that. She's alive because she's fighting, and I'll fight with her every step of the way. David's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the machines, then back to Laura. He didn't speak, but the silence was heavier than words. Finally, he turned and left without another word. Laura's chest ached with suspicion. She knew something was wrong with him. every instinct scream. That night, Laura leaned back in the stiff hospital chair, exhaustion dragging at her body. Helen had insisted she rest, even if just for a moment, but Laura couldn't, not completely. She drifted in and out of half-sleep, her hand never letting go of Emily's. And then, just after midnight, she felt it. A faint movement. Her eyes flew open. Emily's fingers twitched against hers, just a flutter but real. "Emily?" Laura whispered, her heart pounding. "Baby, it's Mama. Can you hear me?" Emily's eyelids flickered. Her lips parted ever so slightly beneath the mask. A weak sound escaped, like a whisper caught in her throat. Laura shot forward. "SHH, don't strain yourself, I'm here." Emily's eyes opened a crack, hazy, unfocused, and then she squeezed her mother's hand. Tears burst from Laura's eyes. She pressed her forehead against Emily's hand, sobbing, "Thank you, God, she's coming back, she's coming back." Emily tried to mouth something, her lips trembling under the mask. Laura leaned close, straining to understand. It was only one word, broken, breathless, almost inaudible. "Note." Laura froze. "What, sweetheart, what note?" But Emily's strength gave out. Her eyes slid closed again, her hand slackening in Laura's grasp. The monitors beeped steadily, but she had slipped back into the coma's heavy veil. Laura sat frozen, her mind racing. A note. She had said note. What note? The next morning, Laura returned home briefly to grab fresh clothes. The house felt alien, as though grief and fear had seeped into its walls. The flowers from neighbors were wilting. The smell of coffee lingered faintly in the air. She walked slowly toward Emily's bedroom, her heart pounding. She hadn't stepped inside since that terrible morning. The door creaked as she pushed it open. The room was frozen in time, the bed unmade, textbooks scattered across the desk, makeup brushes still resting on the vanity. Laura's chest tightened as she stepped inside. "Where, Emily?" she whispered. "Where did you hide it?" She began searching, pulling open drawers, lifting pillows, rifling through notebooks. Nothing. Finally, she knelt by the bedside table. She opened the top drawer, finding the usual clutter: hair ties, pens, a half-empty lip gloss. She was about to close it when her fingers brushed something taped to the underside of the drawer. Her breath caught. She peeled it off carefully. It was a folded piece of paper, creased and worn. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. Inside, in Emily's handwriting, were words that made Laura's blood run cold. "Mom, if you're reading this and something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Please don't trust David." Laura's knees gave out. She sat hard on the floor, the note trembling in her hands, her vision blurred with tears. Oh God, Emily had known. Her daughter had been afraid, and Laura hadn't seen it. She pressed the note to her chest, sobbing until she could barely breathe. When she returned to the hospital later, Helen rushed to her side. "Laura, you look pale. What happened?" Laura glanced around the hallway. David wasn't there. She shoved the note into Helen's hands. "Read." Helen's eyes scanned the words, her mouth fell open. She looked up, horrified. "Laura, this is proof." Laura nodded, her voice raw. "She told me last night. She whispered it. I had to find it, and I did." Helen clutched her sister's arm. "You have to take this to the police right away." But Laura shook her head, her eyes burning with a dangerous resolve. "Not yet. If I hand it over now, David will know. He'll run. I need to understand what he did. I need to know everything." That evening, David returned to the hospital. His expression was calm, but his eyes darted uneasily between Laura and Helen. "Any change?" he asked flatly. Laura forced herself to keep her face neutral. "Stable, still unconscious." He nodded once, then dropped into a chair, pulling out his phone. Laura's hands tightened on her lap. She could feel the note burning in her pocket. She glanced through the ICU window at her daughter, fighting silently for life. Then she turned back to David, who scrolled on his phone as though nothing had happened. Her stomach twisted with fury. He knows. He knows I'm closer to the truth. And she vowed silently, right then, that she would not let him take another breath of peace until Emily was safe and the truth was exposed. The note never left Laura's pocket. Even when she sat by Emily's bedside, clutching her daughter's hand, or when she forced herself to eat in the cafeteria with Helen, the folded piece of paper stayed pressed against her heart like a fragile weapon. Every time she touched it, she felt Emily's whisper again. Note. It wasn't just a warning, it was a lifeline. Proof. And yet, David was still here. Still pacing the halls like a shadow, sitting in the waiting room with that expressionless mask, stepping outside for smoke breaks that always seemed to last too long. Lau. Ra watched him closely now. Every gesture, every word, she was going to uncover everything. That night, when David left for fresh air, Laura slipped into the hospital's family lounge with Helen. The TV flickered silently on the wall, the smell of disinfectant heavy in the air. Helen leaned close, whispering, "What's your plan?" Laura unfolded the note carefully, her hands trembling. "This is proof that Emily was scared of him, but I need more. I need to know what he's hiding." Helen frowned. "Laura, you can't do this alone. If he really hurt Emily, if he almost killed her, then he's dangerous." Laura's eyes hardened. "He's already dangerous. That's why I can't wait. The police need something concrete." Helen hesitated, then nodded. "Then where do we start?" Laura exhaled shakily. "His past, before he married me, before Emily started pulling away from him." When Laura returned home the next morning to grab more clothes, she didn't go straight to her room. Instead, she slipped into the small study David used as an office. The air smelled faintly of stale smoke and leather. His papers were stacked neatly on the desk, but the locked drawer at the bottom caught her eye. Her heart thudded. She knew David always kept important documents there. She tried the handle, locked. She cursed under her breath. Then she remembered the small tin box on the top shelf of their closet, the one that held spare keys. Her hands shook as she retrieved them, fumbling through until one slid neatly into the lock. Click, the drawer opened. Inside were folders, receipts, and envelopes, bills, insurance papers, but beneath them all, shoved toward the back, was a thinner file with no label. Laura pulled it out, her breath catching as she flipped it open. Inside were copies of police reports, old ones. Her eyes scanned quickly, her vision blurring as she took in the words: domestic disturbance, restraining order, allegations of violence. Her stomach dropped. One report stood out, a woman's name, Claire Matthews, filed nearly 10 years ago. The report detailed a night of violence. Claire claimed her partner, David, had grabbed her by the neck during an argument. No charges were filed after she withdrew the complaint. Laura's hands trembled violently, so it wasn't just Emily. He had done this before. Her knees weakened as rage and horror twisted inside her. She pressed the file to her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The slam of a door downstairs made her jump. David was home, her blood froze. She stuffed the file back into the drawer, locking it quickly. She shoved the key into her pocket just as David's footsteps echoed up the stairs. "Laura," he called, "you home?" Her voice cracked. "Yes, just getting clothes." He appeared in the doorway, studying her with those sharp, dark eyes. "You look pale." She forced a weak smile. "Didn't sleep much." He stepped closer, too close. "You're hiding something." Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" His eyes narrowed. "I can tell, you've been different, whispering with Helen, talking to those detectives too much." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "You're imagining things." For a long, suffocating moment, he just stared at her. Then, finally, he smirked faintly. "You've always been a terrible liar." And he walked past her down the hall as though nothing had happened. But Laura's knees nearly buckled. He knew. Back at the hospital, Laura pulled Helen into the bathroom, her voice shaking. "I found reports," she whispered. "From years ago, another woman, he hurt her. She filed a restraining order." Helen's face paled. "Oh my God, Laura, this is enough. We have to go to the police." Laura shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't want to risk him running, or worse if he realizes Emily's waking up." Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. Helen grabbed her shoulders. "Then we'll do this carefully. We'll show the detectives what you found. Let them handle him." Laura hesitated, her mind screaming with fear and doubt, but then she thought of Emily's weak whisper. Note. Her daughter had trusted her to find the truth, and Laura wasn't going to fail her again. The detectives returned that evening, their presence quiet but firm. Detective Harris asked to speak privately again, and Laura finally handed them the note. Her hands shook as she unfolded it, passing it across the table. This was hidden in her room. She wrote it before it happened. She was afraid of David. The detectives read silently, their expressions grim. Harris folded it carefully. "This changes things, and with what Dr. Hayes told us about the bruises, yes, this is serious." Cole leaned forward. "Do you have any reason to believe he's planning to leave, or silence her if she wakes?" Laura's throat closed. She nodded. "Yes, I can feel it. He's watching her, watching me. He doesn't want her to wake up." Harris's jaw tightened. "We'll keep a man stationed nearby, quietly, if he tries anything." "We'll know." That night, Laura sat by Emily's bed again. The monitors beeped steadily. Her daughter's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Laura brushed hair from Emily's forehead, whispering softly, "I found it, baby. I found your note. I believe you. I'll protect you, no matter what it takes." For a moment, she thought she saw the faintest flicker of a smile on Emily's lips. Laura broke down, clutching her daughter's hand, sobbing. But she didn't notice David standing in the hallway, watching through the glass, his face dark and unreadable. The night was too quiet. The steady rhythm of Emily's monitor had become the lullaby Laura clung to. Each beep was a promise. Each rise and fall of her daughter's fragile chest was proof she was still fighting. But then, suddenly, the rhythm faltered. The monitor shrieked with a piercing alarm. Laura shot upright, her chair crashing backward against the floor. "No!" she screamed, clutching Emily's hand. "Don't you leave me, baby, please. Don't leave me again." The doors burst open. Nurses rushed in, their shoes squeaking against the sterile floor. A doctor followed, barking orders. "Cardiac arrest, get the crash cart now." The room erupted into chaos. Laura was shoved back by firm hands. She pressed against the wall, sobbing hysterically as the medical team swarmed Emily's bed. "Clear," a voice shouted. The defibrillator paddles jolted Emily's chest. Her body arched violently before crashing back against the mattress. Again, clear. Laura pressed her fist against her mouth, muffling her scream. Her daughter's small, fragile body convulsed under the electric shock, then stilled. The monitor beeped weakly. A faint rhythm. She was back. Laura collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her trembling hands. But amid the chaos, one thought struck her like a blade. This wasn't random. Emily had been stabilizing. The doctors said she was steady. And now, suddenly, her heart had failed again. Laura's eyes darted to the IV line running into Emily's arm. Her stomach churned violently. What if someone had tampered with it? Her breath caught. David. When the chaos settled, Dr. Hayes emerged from the room, sweat beading on his forehead. His voice was tight, controlled. "She's alive," he said. "For now, but that was close, too close." Laura grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "This isn't natural. Someone's doing this to her." His eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" Her voice cracked. She was stable, and then she crashed. David was here tonight. He's always here, always watching her. What if he touched something? Hayes hesitated, glancing back at the room. He lowered his voice. "We'll run a talk screen, and I'll make sure the nurses keep extra eyes on her. But Mrs. Laura?" His eyes locked onto hers. "If you believe she's in danger, you need to say so. Officially." Laura's chest tightened. Her throat closed. But before she could answer, David appeared down the hall. His expression was unreadable. The next morning, the detectives returned. Detective Harris's sharp eyes studied Laura closely. "You look worse," he said softly. "What happened?" Laura's voice trembled as she explained the crash. "It wasn't random. I know it was. Someone tried to take her again." Harris's jaw tightened. "And you think it was your husband?" Her whole body shook, but she nodded. "Yes, I can't prove it, but I know it." Harris exchanged a glance with Cole. Then he leaned in, his voice low. "Then listen carefully. We've already started looking into him, and there are things you need to know." The detectives revealed what Laura had begun to suspect. David's past was far darker than he had ever admitted. There were whispers of abuse from a previous relationship, sealed police records, financial troubles hidden behind layers of debt. And one more detail that made Laura's blood run cold: David had recently increased Emily's life insurance policy. Quietly, without telling her, Laura's stomach lurched. "No, oh God, no," Cole's voice was firm. "We're not saying anything yet until we have proof, but you need to understand you and your daughter may be in danger. Stay vigilant. Don't let him near her unsupervised." Tears streamed down Laura's face. She nodded, her chest heaving with sobs. That night, Laura refused to leave Emily's room. She sat in the chair, her eyes never leaving her daughter. David entered quietly, his face calm, too calm. "You look awful," he muttered, leaning against the wall. "You should rest." "I'm not leaving her," Laura snapped. He studied her for a long moment. His eyes were dark, unreadable. Then, finally, he smirked faintly. "You really think you can protect her forever?" Laura's heart dropped. Her blood froze, her voice shook. "What did you say?" But he didn't answer. He just turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Laura's body trembled violently. She pressed her hand against her chest, gasping for breath. That smirk, those were. DS, he wasn't even hiding it anymore. She looked at her daughter lying motionless on the bed, machines fighting for her life. and she whispered a vow through her tears. "I will protect you, Emily. I will never let him touch you again." Later that night, Laura stepped into the hallway for water. She froze when she overheard David's voice, low, urgent, speaking into his phone near the elevators. "No, she hasn't said anything yet, but if the girl wakes up, it's over. You understand me? It's over." Laura's stomach twisted violently. He wasn't just talking about Emily, he was talking about secrets. Secrets he was desperate to bury, and Emily was the only one who could reveal them. Laura backed away, her body trembling. She ran to the nurse's station, her voice frantic. "Please don't let my husband near her room. Not alone. Please, you don't understand, he's dangerous." The nurse looked startled. "Mrs. Laura, we..." But before she could finish, a hand clamped down on Laura's shoulder. David. His grip was iron, his smile thin. "What are you telling them, Laura?" he asked softly, dangerously. Laura's heart pounded so hard she thought she might collapse, but for the first time she didn't look away. She met his eyes, her voice shaking but firm. "The truth." The room was thick with silence after Laura's words. The truth. David's hand lingered on her shoulder for a moment longer, his grip firm enough to bruise. Then, slowly, he released her. His smile never reached his eyes. "You're tired," he murmured. "You don't know what you're saying." But Laura did know. Every fiber of her body screamed it. She waited until he walked away, disappearing down the corridor. Only then did she collapse against the nurse's desk, her legs trembling violently. The nurse touched her arm gently. "Do you want us to call security, ma'am?" Laura shook her head quickly, wiping her tears. "Not yet, just please don't let him in her room alone. Not for a second." The nurse nodded solemnly. "I'll make sure of it." Back inside the ICU, Laura sank into the chair at Emily's bedside. She brushed her daughter's hair back, whispering through shaky breaths. "He can't hurt you anymore, baby. I won't let him, I promise." And then it happened. Emily's eyelids flickered. Laura gasped, leaning forward so fast she nearly knocked the tray off the side table. "Emily," she whispered desperately. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The monitors beeped faster. Emily's lips parted beneath the oxygen mask, a faint moan escaping. Laura sobbed, clutching her daughter's hand. "Yes, baby, yes, I'm here, I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy but alive. She blinked slowly, struggling to focus. Laura pressed her forehead to Emily's hand, tears soaking her skin. "Don't speak yet, just know I'm right here." Emily's lips moved again, forming a shape without sound. Laura leaned closer, straining to understand. It was just one word. "Dad." The world tilted. Laura froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Tell me." Emily tried again, her voice a rasp beneath the oxygen mask. "Dad, not safe." Laura's stomach twisted violently. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "I know, baby, I know, you don't have to be afraid anymore." But Emily shook her head weakly. Her trembling hand tried to rise but fell back onto the sheets. Laura clasped it tightly, whispering through her tears. "Save your strength, please, you'll tell me when you can, just rest now." But her heart pounded with terror. Emily knew, Emily remembered, and if David realized she was waking, he'd do anything to silence her. The detectives returned the following morning. Laura rushed to meet them in the hallway, her words frantic. She woke up, just for a moment. She said something. She said, "Dad, not safe." Harris's expression hardened. "That's critical." "If she can give a full statement?" "She's still too weak," Laura interrupted. "But she knows, and if he finds out," her voice cracked, "he'll try again." Harris nodded grimly. "We'll place an officer undercover on this floor. He won't get close without us knowing." Laura sagged against the wall, sobbing with relief. But inside, terror still clawed at her chest. David was slipping. She could see it. The mask he wore was beginning to crack, and a desperate man was the most dangerous of all. That evening, David stormed into the hospital room despite the nurse's attempt to stall him. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched. "What's this I hear about cops hanging around?" he demanded. Laura's blood ran cold. "They're here for protection, for Emily." He sneered. "Protection from who?" "You tell me," she shot back, her voice trembling but fierce. For the first time, his smirk faltered. His eyes flicked to Emily's pale form, then back to Laura. "You're letting them poison you against me," he said darkly. "After everything I've done for this family." Laura stood, her body tremble. Ing but her chin high. "You almost destroyed it." She knows, David, Emily remembers. His face hardened, his fists clenching at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," she snapped, tears streaking her face. I found her note. I know what you did to her, and soon the police will too." For a long, suffocating moment, he just stared at her, his chest rising and falling like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Then, slowly, his lips curved into a chilling smile. "You think you're safe," he whispered, "but you're not you, not her, not if I go down." Laura's knees nearly gave out. She clutched the chair for balance as he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hall. When he was gone, Laura collapsed into sobs, shaking uncontrollably. She pressed her forehead to Emily's hand, whispering through her tears, "He won't hurt you again. I swear it. I swear it." The next morning, Emily opened her eyes again, this time for longer. Her gaze was weak, unfocused, but she squeezed Laura's hand with trembling fingers. Laura leaned close, tears streaming. "I'm here, baby. You're safe with me." Emily's lips moved. Her voice was a faint rasp. "Mom? Yes, sweetheart, I'm here." Her glassy eyes filled with tears. She tried again. "Dad," he tried too, but the words dissolved into a coughing fit, her frail body trembling under the strain. Alarms beeped. Nurses rushed in. Laura was shoved aside again as they adjusted her oxygen, but she had heard enough. Her daughter was remembering. And soon, Emily would tell the whole truth. From the doorway, David stood watching. His face was pale, twisted with something darker than rage, and Laura knew he wasn't going to wait much longer. The hospital seemed quieter than usual that night. Too quiet. Laura sat by Emily's bed, her fingers tracing patterns over her daughter's fragile hand. The monitors hummed softly, their rhythmic beeps steady. For the first time in days, she felt a thin thread of hope. Emily had spoken. Weak, broken words, but words nonetheless. She remembered, and soon the detectives would return to take her statement. But Laura's relief was thin, brittle. Beneath it pulsed a fear she couldn't shake. David hadn't been seen since morning. His absence wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. He was planning something. She could feel it. Around midnight, Laura's exhaustion finally pulled her into shallow sleep. She rested her head against the edge of the bed, still holding Emily's hand. The creak of the door jolted her awake. Her heart pounded when she saw him. David. He slipped inside quietly, the dim light casting shadows across his face. His eyes were wild, restless. "What are you doing here?" Laura whispered, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. He closed the door softly behind him, locking it with a click. Laura's blood ran cold. David stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Emily. "She's awake," he said softly, his tone eerie in its calm. "She knows." Laura stood quickly, her body trembling. "Don't touch her." He looked at her finally, his eyes blazing. "You don't understand. If she talks, it's over, everything. Do you want our lives destroyed? Do you want me in prison?" Her voice cracked. "You deserve prison?" He flinched, rage flashing across his face. "After everything I've done for you, you tried to kill her." Laura screamed, tears streaming. "You tried to bury my baby alive?" The words echoed off the sterile walls. Emily stirred faintly at the sound, her fingers twitching in Laura's grasp. David's gaze snapped to her, his chest heaved. "No," Laura whispered, stepping in front of her daughter. "You'll have to go through me." He advanced slowly, his fists clenched. "You always were weak," he hissed. "Always too emotional, too blind. I kept this family together, and now you want to destroy it." Laura's knees shook, but she stood her ground. "The only one who destroyed this family is you." For a moment, their eyes locked, hers burning with terror but defiance, his seething with fury. Then he lunged. Laura screamed, shoving the chair into his path. It crashed into his knees, buying her a second. She scrambled for the call button, slamming it with trembling fingers. David roared, grabbing her wrist and yanking her away from the bed. "You think that'll save you?" Laura fought desperately, clawing at his arms, kicking against his legs. "Help, somebody help!" Emily's eyes fluttered open weakly. She moaned, struggling against the mask. "Mom," her faint voice fueled Laura's strength. She slammed her knee into David's stomach. He stumbled, cursing. The door burst open. 2 nurses and a uniformed officer rushed in. "Step back," the officer shouted. David spun, his eyes wild. "She's lying. She's poisoning you all against me." But the officer didn't hesitate. He grabbed David, forcing him against the wall. David fought violently, shouting incoherently, until handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Laura C. collapsed against Emily's bed, sobbing uncontrollably. The nurses shielded Emily, adjusting her oxygen mask, soothing her trembling body. David screamed as he was dragged from the room, his voice echoing down the hall. "She's lying. You'll regret this, Laura. You'll all regret this." The room fell into silence. Laura clung to her daughter, tears soaking Emily's sheets. Her body shook so hard she thought she might shatter, but Emily's weak hand squeezed hers. Laura lifted her head, staring through tears at her daughter's pale face. Emily's lips moved, rasping through the mask. "Thank you," Laura broke down completely, pressing her forehead to Emily's hand, whispering over and over, I love you, you're safe now, you're safe." Hours later, the detectives returned. Harris's face was grim but steady. "He's in custody," he said quietly. "We'll hold him until we can file charges. With your daughter's testimony and the evidence we've gathered, this won't disappear." Laura nodded weakly, her whole body drained. "Thank you." Harris hesitated, then added, "You saved her life tonight. If you hadn't fought—" Laura cut him off, her voice raw. "I almost lost her once. I wasn't going to lose her again." When the detectives left, Laura returned to Emily's side. Her daughter's breathing was steadier now, her eyelids heavy but aware. Laura stroked her hair gently, whispering, "It's over, sweetheart. He can't hurt you anymore." Emily's lips trembled. "Promise." Tears filled Laura's eyes again. She kissed her daughter's forehead, whispering through a broken smile, "I promise." But deep in the shadows of Laura's heart, fear still lingered. David's words echoed in her mind. "You'll regret this, Laura. You'll all regret this." And she knew this nightmare wasn't over. Not yet. Morning sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds of the ICU, painting pale stripes across Emily's bed. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, but for Laura, it was the scent of safety. Daughter was still here, alive, breathing, fighting. For the first time since the funeral, Laura allowed herself to exhale fully. She sat by Emily's side, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Emily's eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. "Hi, sweetheart," Laura whispered, her voice breaking into a trembling smile. "You scared me so badly." Emily's lips curled faintly. Her voice was hoarse, a rasp that cut straight into Laura's soul. "I tried, Mom." Tears stung Laura's eyes. "I know, baby. You fought so hard, and now you don't have to be afraid anymore." But Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled as she whispered, He tried to." Laura pressed her fingers gently against her daughter's lips. "SHH, you don't have to carry it alone, just rest. The detectives will come soon. You'll tell them everything, and they'll make sure he never hurts us again." By mid-morning, Detectives Harris and Cole arrived with a nurse and a notepad. "Emily," Harris said gently, kneeling at her bedside, "we know you're tired, but if you can tell us what happened, it will help protect you and your mom." Laura held her daughter's hand tightly, whispering encouragement. Emily swallowed, her voice breaking as she tried to speak. It wasn't an accident." The room grew heavy with silence. Her eyes darted to Laura, then back to the detectives. "Dad, he was angry. I told him I wanted to leave, wanted to stay with Aunt Helen. He grabbed me. Said I was ungrateful, said I'd ruin everything. I couldn't breathe." Tears streamed down Laura's face as she whispered, "Oh God," Emily's voice cracked as she continued. "Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I couldn't move. They said I was gone, but I was. I could hear you, Mom. I could feel you holding me. That's what saved me." Laura broke into sobs, clutching her daughter's hand against her lips. Detective Harris's jaw tightened. "You've been very brave, Emily." "That's exactly what we needed to know." He stood, his expression grim. With her testimony, the note, and his past records will ensure he never sees freedom again. But Laura's relief was short-lived. That afternoon, news spread quickly through the hospital. David had attacked the officers transporting him. He'd been restrained again, but not before screaming threats that echoed through the station. "He's not done," Harris warned Laura quietly. "Men like him, they don't accept defeat. But don't worry. We'll keep you both protected." Laura nodded, but her chest tightened with unease. She knew David too well. He was dangerous, cunning, and his words haunted her. "You'll regret this." Days passed slowly. Emily grew stronger, her voice steadier, her eyes brighter. Nurses whispered of her recovery as a miracle. Laura never left her side. She held her daughter's hand through sleepless nights, brushed her hair in the mornings, whispered prayers of gratitude every chance she got. Helen visited daily, her presence a balm. Together, the sisters Ray built a fragile sense of safety around Emily's bed. But even in those quiet moments, Laura never forgot the shadows that lingered outside the hospital walls. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Laura stepped out for coffee. The hallway was dim, nearly empty, and then she froze. A A shape moved at the far end. Her blood ran cold. David. He stood behind the glass doors, his wrists still raw from the cuffs, his eyes locked on hers with a fury that burned like fire. 2 officers restrained him quickly, dragging him back toward a waiting van. His voice echoed down the corridor, chilling every soul within earshot. "This isn't over, Laura. I'll never let her ruin me. Never." Laura's knees buckled. The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering across the floor. Nurses rushed to her side, but she didn't hear them. All she could hear was his voice, lingering in her mind like poison. That night, as she sat once more at Emily's side, Laura whispered softly into the dim light. "You don't have to be afraid anymore, sweetheart. He'll never touch you again." Emily stirred, opening her eyes slowly. Her voice was still weak, but her words were clear. "Mom, promise?" Laura kissed her daughter's forehead, her tears falling like rain. "I promise," she whispered. "No matter what he does, no matter what happens, I'll protect you, always." The days turned into weeks. Emily regained her strength, taking her first steps with the help of nurses. Her laughter returned slowly, fragile but real. Laura held her every chance she got, savoring each smile, each word. But late at night, when the hospital grew quiet, Laura often sat awake, staring out the window. Because deep inside, she knew one thing. David's face, twisted with rage, his words seared into her memory, they weren't the end of the story. They were a warning. And though her daughter had been given a second chance at life, the shadow of what he might do next still lingered. Before you go, let us know in the comments where you watched this story. And if this emotional journey touched you, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Your support means everything.